Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he has disagreements with Donald Trump over last week's Board of Peace agreement aimed at stabilizing Gaza. He made the comments after meeting with the board's lead envoy, Nikolai Mladenov, told Netanyahu that Israel must stop attacks on the Gaza Strip. After the meeting, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called for a new cabinet vote on the Board of Peace plan. He is claiming that ministers approved that plan based on misleading information. So when he announced the deal, Donald Trump said, quote, "As disarmament is completed, Israeli forces will withdraw." Now the Board of Peace has released a statement saying, contrary to inaccurate reports, we note that the full withdrawal of the IDF beyond the yellow line will take place only once decommissioning is complete, as Hamas committed to the mediators. This applies to light weapons, heavy weapons, and the tunnels alike. Implementation will be overseen by the International Stabilization Force and by the Implementation Verification Committee. Yossi Mekelberg is with us, Senior Consulting Fellow of the Middle East and North Africa Program at Chatham House. Yossi, you're joining us from London. It's good to have you on the program, and we have to get, and I want to warn viewers, we are going to get into the details of the 15-point roadmap that was published on Thursday and the message that we're getting from the Board of Peace today. So on Thursday, the roadmap that was published provided that Hamas would disarm and Israel would withdraw from the Gaza Strip, both of these things to happen step by step and according to a mutually agreed timetable. But now the Board of Peace, in its latest message, after meeting the Israeli Prime Minister, says the full withdrawal of the Israeli military beyond the yellow line, we just read this quote, but I'm reading it again, will take place once decommissioning is complete. So in other words, they're saying first Hamas disarms, then Israel withdraws. Is this a change from the roadmap, from the document that was published on Thursday? How do you read this?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It seems like this, that there is a change between a kind of, because a lot of it is about the sequencing, what happened first, what followed, and at what pace, how much of decommissioning, how much of withdrawal, because both sides, on political survival, what they are going to tell their constituency after 3 years of bloody war, what they're going to say to their constituency if they come out with no achievement. So from Israel's point of view, they want to see the complete decommissioning, even dismantling of weapons, and even this term is disputed between the sides. Hamas want to show to its own paper that it's not going to decommission, give up the weapons without Israel withdraw. And then the question, how do they do that with which there is zero trust between the sides? And I think in this such complex negotiation, you don't expect them to trust each other, but they should trust the mediator. In other words, that by the end of this process, Hamas hand all the weapons to the Palestinian Authority or to the National Committee to administer Gaza, and Israel go back to the green line. But the question, if they start to pushing it, it might end to the collapse of the agreement.
So could this new announcement, that was going to be my question. Do you think this could collapse the whole deal? Because you mentioned in the earlier part of your answer that the sequencing is important, right? Hamas has always said it will not just disarm unilaterally and it won't surrender weapons with Israel still occupying most of Gaza. And now this latest announcement says that they should do precisely that.
And, one of the sides decides that they can't continue, again, because they need to talk also to their own constituency. As you said earlier, there are already some within the Israeli government that claim that they were not briefed or they got the wrong information. Probably we know less what's happened within Hamas, but you assume some people will be unhappy within Hamas, will see that Hamas is giving too much too early without getting anything in return. That's why the trust of the mediators, they say at the end of the day, there will be a full withdrawal for full decommissioning. And if they won't trust the mediators, then it probably might lead to a collapse. What can be done, you can always find a formula. For instance, if you think about what happened in Lebanon, which is far from being perfect, there were some pilot areas in which Israel withdrew in in return for the ceasefire. So if it's not a full withdrawal, at least at the beginning, while there is a verified process of decommissioning, some pilot areas. Bear in mind that at the first the first stage, Israel is basically asked only to withdraw to the yellow line that it already agreed in the ceasefire agreement last October.
There's another important point in this latest Board of Peace announcement that could sound like a detail, but I don't think it is. And it's about what weapons Hamas has to hand over. Because the latest announcement says, quote, Hamas decommissioning of weapons applies to light weapons, heavy weapons, and the tunnels alike. Now, the roadmap that was published on Thursday doesn't say that. Point 8 says that the decommissioning concerns heavy weapons. And point number 9 says that personal weapons, so light weapons in Gaza, shall be subject to the regulations of relevant Palestinian laws. So again, I'm fully aware that we're going into the nitty-gritty, but as you pointed out, that could collapse the deal. So the roadmap originally said Hamas will decommission heavy weapons. The language from the Board of Peace now says that it applies to light weapons. Is this significant in your view?
I think it's significant. I think it's actually significant to enter into the nitty-gritty because, as I said, the devil is in the details. And every detail that one of the sides see that or perceive that it's not within their zone of acceptability, they might lead to the collapse of the agreement. And I think in my mind, there was probably a mistake in the negotiation to put an emphasis only on the heavy weapon, because it's obvious from Israel's point of view, it's actually the light weapons that they see right now as more threatening for Israel, not the heavy weapons, because most of them, the rockets and the rest, the whatever missiles left, are not as endangering Israel security-wise than the light weapons. So again, at the end of the day, it's also the process should lead that there will be only one Palestinian force, security force, under one body that governs the entire West Bank and Gaza. But to begin with Gaza, this will be in control of the weapons, light or heavy. But this is probably a point that should have been discussed before they actually published the document.
Yeah, well, you pointed out that from Israel's perspective, the light weapons might actually be more dangerous to their national security. This is how Israelis see it. I will just leave viewers with that, just to say that watch that language around heavy and light weaponry in the Board of Peace roadmap on the disarmament of Hamas and the pullback of Israel, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. We'll leave it there for now. Yossi Mekelberg joining us from London. Thank you very much.
Thank you.